There's a chair at the head of our dining table that no one sits in anymore. We don't talk about it. We just leave it. Like, if we leave it long enough, he might come back and fill it again. I think about that chair a lot. My grandfather had a way of telling stories that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. He'd cradle his wine glass in those slightly unsteady hands, and his eyes would go somewhere far away, somewhere none of us could follow. And then he'd pull you right into whatever world he was building with his words. He told us the same stories over and over. My father, Mark, used to roll his eyes. He's told that one 100 times, sweetheart. But Grandpa would just chuckle and say 100 times was never too many for a good tale. He was right. I know that now. I wasn't ready for the hospital room. I don't think you can ever be ready for that kind of stillness. The monitors, the artificial light, the way a person you love can look so small in a bed that's meant to hold them. Mark and I sat on either side of him, holding his hands. I kept thinking, say something, tell him something real, but all I managed was, "We love you." His eyes opened just for a moment, a faint smile. He squeezed our hands, barely, like the last breath of wind before a storm passes, and he whispered, "My stories." And then he was gone. "They live on, Grandpa," I told him. "They live on." I don't know if he heard me. I hope he did. The watch went to Liam. My mother thought, that's what Grandpa would have wanted. And I think she was right. Liam stood in Grandpa's study, holding it like it might break, this small, gold, elegant thing. And he said, "I don't know if I can." He meant carry it, carry all of it, the weight of being the one chosen to remember. "You will," I told him. "We all will, in our own way." I said it with more confidence than I felt. Grandpa's study smelled like pipe smoke and old books, and something I could only describe as him. When Liam and I sat on the floor, going through his things, I kept expecting to hear his footsteps in the hallway. I kept almost turning around. We found his gardening journal. I blew the dust off the cover, and it came away in a soft cloud, like the room had been holding its breath. Page after page in his neat handwriting, every sprout documented, every planting date recorded. Liam laughed when he remembered how Grandpa would forget where he'd planted half of them. I laughed too. Then I turned a page, and a pressed forget-me-not fell into my lap, fragile and faded, Mom's favorite flower. I put it back carefully. Some things you don't need to understand to know they're sacred. But then there was Elena. I found the second journal in the greenhouse, the old one out back, buried under years of ivy and neglect. The lock groaned when I turned the key. Inside, it smelled like damp earth and something floral, something lost. On the workbench, the journal was lying open, its pages filled with intricate sketches of flowers I didn't recognize. And then a name. Over and over. Elena. I called Aunt Carol with my knuckles white around my phone. "He never did forget her, did he?" was all she said, weary. Like she'd been waiting decades for that question. I asked her who Elena was, why he'd kept it secret. She told me some things were better left buried. That love isn't always simple, that neither are people. I sat with the pressed violet from that journal in my palm for a long time. I thought I'd known him. I thought he'd told us everything. The hardest thing about losing someone isn't the absence. It's the discovery that the person you're grieving was larger, more complicated, more human than you ever allowed yourself to see while they were alive. Mark wanted to clear out the study fast. "The realtor wants to show the house next week," he said. He wasn't wrong. Practically, logically, he was completely right. But I stood there, holding Grandpa's silver locket, and I couldn't make myself agree. We fought about it. Mark said keeping things wouldn't bring him back or pay my bills. He told me to be realistic. Moving on doesn't mean forgetting, I told him. Some of us have a different way of remembering. I think we were both right, in different ways. That's the thing about grief. It doesn't give you a unified strategy. It just gives you people who loved the same person, all breaking differently. At the 1 year mark, I stood at his grave with a white rose and Aunt Carol beside me. She said he wouldn't have wanted us to dwell, that he always looked forward. But he kept secrets, I told her. Secrets that feel heavy even now. We all have them, dear. It's how we carry them that matters. She walked away before I could ask anything else. I stayed a little longer. I looked at his name carved into the granite, and I thought about Elna, about the forget-me-not, about the lighthouse drawing we found with the word hope written on the back in his shaky hand. All the rooms inside him we never got to enter. The last journal we found, I still don't quite know how to explain what it did to us. It was tucked under a stack of letters. I almost missed it. The cover was worn smooth with handling, like he'd picked it up and put it down 1,000 times before finally writing what was inside. I read it aloud, to Mark, to Chloe. My voice was barely steady. To my children. If you are reading this, then perhaps you have found the courage to look beyond the surface. I was a man of flaws, of silences, but my love for you was never in doubt. Forgive the distances I created and know that every decision, however misguided, came from a heart that simply wanted to protect you. Live fully, love deeply, and remember the good. Your father, always, Chloe cried. Mark put his hand on my shoulder. None of us spoke for a long time. He really did want us to heal, Mark said. Finally. He finally let us in, said Chloe. And I sat there holding the journal, thinking, this is what he couldn't say out loud. This is the story he saved for last. We still have Sunday dinners. We still laugh. Martha makes his favorite roast, and David attempts the carving, and Chloe tells the story about the gravy that ended up on the ceiling. And we all laugh until it hurts in the best possible way. The chair at the head of the table stays empty. But it doesn't feel like absence anymore. Not exactly. It feels like he left it for his stories. And his stories are still very much alive. I went to the old oak tree not long ago, the one where he used to take me, when I was small. I put my hand against the bark, rough and warm, and I wore the watch Liam had eventually pressed into my hands on one of those quiet afternoons. You always said this tree had seen it all, I told him. It's seen me grow up too. The leaves moved above me, just the wind probably, but I chose to believe it was him. The hardest part I've learned is living without the echoes. But they're not gone. They're in the pressed flowers and the journals and the gardening notes and the empty chair. They're in the way Chloe's face opens up when she talks about constellations. They're in the way I now document every plant I grow, even knowing I'll probably forget where I put half of them. He told a good story, my grandfather. And he was right. 100 times is never too many.